Would you like me to take the roll call, Mr. Chairman? Representative Henderson. Representative Larson. Representative Sherwood. Representative Stiff.
Here.
Representative Walters. Representative Zwanitzer.
Here.
Senator Anderson.
Here.
Senator Garou.
Here.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salazar. Co-Chairman Nicholas. Co-Chairman Kinski. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Wow. What number is the bill?
Mr. Chairman, it's currently 23 LSO 510, working draft 6.
And so we have someone who want to walk us through the bill.
Mr. Chairman, certainly, if you'd like, I could walk through the bill. The title of the bill is the Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions. You'll remember that this
The big white binder is. You can go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, you'll remember back in November, Governor's Letter 16, the governor requested a 1% employer contribution increase to the Public Employee Retirement Plan and $3 million general fund for that, that would biennialize into future bienniums. When the JAC discussed that, really came to light that increasing the employer contribution in the context of a supplemental budget would be kind of problematic. And so the JAC requested this bill draft. And the way this bill is structured, if you go to page 2, that section is increasing the employee contribution by 0.5%. And I will note that on line 14, there's a date that's going to be changed. It needs to be 2023. So the employee contribution would go up from 9.25% to 9.75% in this. That's what this piece of the legislation is doing, starting July 1, 2023. On the next page, page 3, it's right. That needs to be corrected to 2023. So it'll start. Okay. The next page, same correction to the date needs to be made on line 18. But what this part of the bill is doing is increasing the employer contribution by another 0.5% from the 9.37% to 9.87%. So the total contribution, if this bill were enacted, would go up from 18.62% to 19.62%. And then on page 4, section 2, starting at line 17, is the appropriation for fiscal year 24 for this. And the way that we developed this was the retirement system gave us their data on salaries by employer group, but their data is all funding sources. So LSO further refined it so that this is an appropriation in section A for the general fund portion of these salaries for these employer groups. It turns out we broke it out by different employer groups: legislative, judicial, executive branch, and then the community colleges and UW. It's a total of $2.175 million. I will note for community colleges and UW, those employees can elect either the Public Employee Retirement Plan or TIAA. So we've incorporated enough in that appropriation to cover all of that. Section C is the appropriation. Oh, I'm sorry. Section B is the appropriation from the SFP for $3.9 million. That would be for school employees. And the total appropriation in the bill is $6,075,000. That's just to cover fiscal year 24. On page 6 in section
employer, half of that is,
This is all to cover the employer contribution, which is 0.5%. The employee, nothing is being covered in this bill. They're picking up their own.
our overall appropriation is 6.7. This is just for the
6.075.
6,075,000. Is that correct?
Pardon me?
Just for the large plan?
Yes, public employee pension plan, correct. Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so section C then on that page gives you the authority for the appropriation for all that from all the non-generally funded sources, and there's no specified amount on that. Page 6 really specifies there just some basics in section D that it's for fiscal year 24 only. Moving on to page 7, just that it cannot be used for any employee contribution there in section F on line 9. And then in section G, it's going to revert if not used. Section H can't be used for anything else. And that's really the bill. And I can answer any questions.
Any questions? Please.
The 6.07 is all entities, the state, the schools, everybody else.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, that is correct. I would like to highlight that local governments are not included in this bill. They traditionally have not been included in funding the retirement increases in
Okay,
this way.
so Mr. Co-Chair, that doubled, that's 12.14, and I can't tie that out to any numbers in my retirement system.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I think the way to think about that is that the retirement information on page 1 of the handout that you have, their information is from all funding sources. And so the appropriation, we further refine that to be just, employees are funded through many different funding streams. And so we've refined it so the appropriation is just for generally funded employees and then employees that are funded by the SFP. School Foundation Program.
Other questions? Polly? Okay, let's go to Dave. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
and I apologize. I think I have the same question. So the total price, how much is the total price tag, and does that show up on any of our handouts? Is perhaps a repeat question.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Stith, I did hand out, and you may have a sheet like this that just has the appropriation summarized by group, and it comes to that
That's this one?
6,075,000. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, the retirement system handout, and they're here to speak on it, really talks about the impact that
Yeah,
this
we'll
would
let
have.
Dave go through that here in a second. Any further questions for Paula? Any questions on the bill before? All right, well, we've got Dave, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Swindell, the Executive Director of the Wyoming Retirement System. I'm joined this morning by Treasurer Kurt Meyer, who serves as a member of our 11-person board to lend a board support and perspective. Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Treasurer. This deals, as Representative Nicholas stated, this deals strictly with the public employee plan. The WRS administers 8 defined benefit plans. This is one of them, but it's the big one. And just a couple of statistics to introduce. This is the public employee plan that has 34,500 active employees in it. We have 30,000 pensioners. We paid out $642 million in benefits last year in this plan. The average benefit being $21,254 per year. The fund is 23% state employees, but 77% is local. Now, the local includes K through 12 education. That's actually 49% of the fund. It's mostly K through 12. And that, since there is an appropriation here to go to the schools to help them pay their employer section, that kind of accounts for some of the confusion, because the appropriation in some ways is funding part of the local, right? So that's one way to think about it. The funding situation in the public employee plan. As this body well knows, we talk about funding ratios, which is the ratio of the estimated value of your liabilities to the value of your assets. The actuaries estimate what the liabilities are. We discount them back to present value. and you compare that to your assets on hand. That's called a market value analysis. And by market value, this plan has a $10.9 million in liabilities, and it had a market value of 9.4. So about $1.5 billion short. And that meant that on a market value, we were 86% funded. But we don't talk about that market ratio much in the pension industry because we know that markets are volatile. Just look at what happened last year. We're in 17% in 2021. The final numbers, we're going to be down about 7% in 2022. So we talk in smooth actuarial value of assets where we smooth the investment gains and losses over 5 years. And that's the way we talk of managing the plan. On that basis, the fund is about 77% funded, and there's about $2.5 billion in unfunded liability. $2.5 billion. Yes. Across all the plans, we have $2.8 billion unfunded, 2.5 of it's in this plan. So that's the sense of the public employee plan. It's 88% of our members. It's 88% of our workload. It's 88%. It's just kind of 88% of what we do. So 77% is, it's going to grow. It's projected to eventually hit 100% by 2038 if all the assumptions are met, but it's a little fragile. And the governor letter, he observed that it's the lowest funded ratio of any of the plans, and it's also where the biggest liability is. And hence he brought to you letter 16, proposing a 1% contribution increase. Actuarially, if you increase contributions by 1%, the year of projected full funding moves up to 2035 instead of 2038. You gain 3 years, one way to look at it. I think another way to look at it is how robust is all of these estimates in the face of adverse experience. And so we ran some analysis for LSO based upon our end of November numbers. We were down 5.5% at that point. If you do that, if we incur a loss in 2022, like we actually have at this point, and nothing changes with contribution rates, and you don't factor in some great recovery to do better than 6.8, you just have this steady diet of 6.8 after that, the fund doesn't achieve 100% within the 30-year amortization period. In fact, it goes out to 2059. It does survive, but it really pushes it out. You're talking a 40-year, and just really pushes it out. A 1% increase saves the plan in that regard. It will fund still within 30 years, just barely, but you'll get to 100% by 2051, according to the projections. And of course, these are just projections, but you can see the difference. If you increase contribution rates, the plan is just much less reliant upon, a little less reliant on investment earnings and becomes more stable. The question between the governor's proposal and this bill is really about who bears the burden, the employee versus the employer. And there's two conflicting philosophies on that, and I subscribe to both of them. One is that retirement is a shared responsibility between the employer and the employee as well as WRS. And that's the philosophy that's reflected in this bill. That's true, and that's well encased in previous state law. And in fact, it went back to a hearing from 1951 when we were considering creating WRS, which happened 2 years later, that the contribution should be roughly equal between the employee and the employer. The other philosophy, though, is that where the governor was coming from, is that we're trying to catch up on the unfunded liability, and that's the employer's problem. And so that was his philosophy. And it does come into total compensation. So anyway, competing philosophies, and both of those have some merit. Financially, from the board's perspective, the big issue for us, it doesn't really matter whether it comes from the employee or the employer. It's 1%, and the actuarial impacts are the same. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks. Subject to any questions you have or members.
So my question, Dave, is from what you were just testifying to, it sounds to me like you're of the opinion that it's a good idea to add 1%, regardless of where it comes from.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand that chart on page 2. If I look at scenario 1, it's 0.5% for employee and employer, and it it gets 100% in 2035. But if I double that input to 1% for the employee and employer on scenario 2, it only moves it up by 1 year. It seems like that should be moving faster, but there must be some other factor in there.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anderson, you're right. It doesn't seem like very much when you look at that metric of when you get to 100%. I would go to that bottom number. Where are you going to be in 30 years in 2052? And then you can see a big difference between 140% and 151%. Contribution rates all have this nature. It doesn't make much difference next year or even 5 years from now, but it makes a big difference. You start to notice it about the 10-year point, 20-year point, and really by the 30-year point. And the difference between a 1% and say a 2% contribution would be follow that same pattern. This is all about compounded returns. The $18 million that would come to the fund, in this case, about 9.5 from 9 million from employers, 9 million from employees. It's about 18 million, almost 19 million. That doesn't make a big difference in year one, but that will compound. In 10 years, it'll be twice that much. And then, of course, you have the year 2 contribution of another 18. It'll compound for 9 years. You look at 10 years, you're starting to have a real difference in funding. And it really compounds at the 20-year point. So this is all making a small contribution now that will compound for the future. And that's what this is all about.
Dave, did you do just a quick little synopsis of what this will do to the paycheck of the average employee in the state of Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman, you actually asked a simple question. The answer's a little complicated because the truth is, I don't know. Because in Wyoming, you don't know what the employers are going to do in total compensation.
Yeah, assuming that the employer that they follow,
But if they follow this pattern, then they will, it be 50 basis points or 0.5%. Be taken out of their paycheck,
Well,
pre-tax.
but how much is that? What I want to know is what's the difference on his monthly paycheck or his annual paycheck?
Well, let's see. I can tell you that the payroll in this plan was about $1.9 billion last year. So, okay, help me out. 1% of 1.9 billion.
It's 2.
Yeah.
So it's $50. 50.
Yeah. The average salary is $53,591 in this plan. So 1% would be $530, about $250
A year.
a year.
So as part of.
And that would be pre-tax.
Yeah.
So probably net pay $200, something like that, Mr. Chairman.
And, it's what we're trying to do is figure out, if you just got an 8% pay raise and you're going to get another 6 or 7% pay raise. What's, and now we're taking, we're taking out, that's $200 a year. So we're taking off $21 a month, basically, of that pay raise.
Right. I think it is in the end viewed as, the ability to do that should be viewed as, what we're doing in total compensation.
Yeah.
And that's the issue there. And the retirement system, of course, isn't an expert on that. We can tell you what the actuarial effects are, and we know what the average payroll is, and we can tell you what the numbers are, but how that compares to what employers will do, especially when you get down to the small local employers, they all are funded differently.
Do you have a list of which of all the employers list, that 77%? A large majority of them, in my understanding, is pay the employee share. And so we don't know there will be no impacts on those folks. But do we know that percentage?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I have it in front of me. Here's the situation on how contributions are handled in the state of Wyoming in this plan. So the present employee contribution is 9.25% of salary, but employers can subsidize part of that. So the net effect can be less on employees. So here's where we stand on that. There are 455 employers in this plan, 455. Last month, when I ran this report for December, 150 of them picked up all of that 9.25%, resulting in 0% being taken out of
So of
employee
that one
paychecks.
hundred and fifty, what's the percentage of?
33%, sir.
Of, of overall beneficiaries to the plan? Not just the.
Hmm.
That's 33% of 455, right?
Correct.
What I want to know is of that 150, how many folks that represents?
I'd have to go back and get a different report. I can tell you that most of the employees are state employees or school district employees, because schools are 49%, the state's 23%. There's your 70, almost 75%. And most school districts mirror the state. There's 123 of the 455 employers that pick up exactly what the state does, which is 5.57%. Yes, sir. 123 of 455 employers, that's 27%, mirror the state by picking up 5.57% component of the 9.25 employee contribution. So 150 pick it up all up, 61 pick more than 5.57, 123 pick up exactly 5.57, 47 pick up a smaller amount, and 74 don't subsidize at all, and they play it straight up. So it's all over the map. But I think when you look at numbers of employees, I'd go with the about 5.57, since that's what
So
school
we're
district.
getting close to 10, Mr. Co-Chair. My thought is that we ought to kick this bill out. If we want to, because we have a deadline to get a bill numbered by Tuesday, I believe. Have it go out of committee and be a formal bill. We don't meet, we're not here on Monday. If we want to modify this bill, there'll be some advocates that want to have us pay all of this, similar to the governor's request. All those options are available to us. If we don't pass the bill out, then there is no bill. So that's just my 2 cents for the body. Go ahead, Mr. Treasurer, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I remember when I was sitting in your guys' seat here a few years ago that we did a separate appropriation just for the federal employees, because they don't have general funds and sometimes they don't have any
Means to
the Fed,
match.
yeah, I mean, nobody can actually pay it. The employer, we all go on the employees in that case. So that's something that I know we had to come back one time and fine tune that in the other house as it moved through the system. So that's something that you might be aware of.
I mean, Dave, to do that, we need to know the number of state employees, what percentage of their salaries. Because a lot of federally funded employees are a mixed bag, and they're not 100% federally funded. So
I think that'd be difficult in the time
Yeah.
frame we have, because we don't collect that data. We don't know whether an employee is what the funding source is, other than obviously the state employees.
Yeah, Mr. Co-Chair, I'm with you, but this is, and win or lose, this is an ongoing conversation that has to be had. The responsible thing to do is to try to make sure that all these plans stay solvent. This is a step towards that, and so if I'm amenable to making this a House bill.
I mean, what made a Senate bill was your idea.
No, I got it from you.
Actually, it was originally this came from Mr. Hicks.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I would move for a bill draft.
Moved and seconded.
Question,
Go ahead.
called question.
Question.
Well, any public comment? Please come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Andy Schwartz, technically representing the town of Jackson at this point. As you all know, I've been involved in these conversations in the past. my recommendation would be that this would be better discussed as an interim topic. I think if we did it that way, we can bring the actuaries in and actually have an involved discussion that really is very broad. They can put up a spreadsheet on a board. I'm looking at Mr. Swindell. I think he agrees. And you guys can just keep punching in numbers and see how all these little numbers affect the long-term outcomes, how it will affect employers, including local employees. I think that would be a more efficient way to deal with this issue. So I would urge this to be an interim topic. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Motion on the bill,
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
please.
I share the concerns of the town of Jackson. That said, for purposes of kind of getting this new committee up to speed and the ability to continue the conversation, publish a bill draft, get it out to the public to kick the tires and kind of just learn more about the issue so that we can thoughtfully address the concerns as identified by the Wyoming retirement system, and the governor, which need to be addressed, I think is prudent, but probably not possible this session because I share those concerns, but maybe. But I do think we should continue the conversation now as the issues in front of us.
Any further discussion? Don?
Mr. Chairman, since this was put out in December, we didn't want to put out a subsequent copy. I sense the committee is ready to vote. I would ask for a technical correction on page 2, line 14 to delete 2022 and insert 2023. And the same on page 3, line 18 to delete 2022 and insert 2023, technical only.
So it looked like you had, we need a technical correction on line 13 and 14, right? Page 2.
Mr. Chairman, it's only on line 14, I believe, and line 18 on page 3.
Okay, that began on July 2021 through, and then it would be June 30, 2023. Everyone got that? Page 3, same thing. What line is that again? Oh, I see it. Yep.
18.
Yep. Any other technical corrections? Okay, sensing the need to leave the room. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman, the motion's on 23 LSO 0510 working graph 0.6 as amended. Representative Henderson, Representative Larson, Representative Sherwood, Representative Stith.
Aye.
Representative Walters. Representative Swanitzer.
Aye.
Senator Anderson. Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salazar. Co-Chairman Kinski.
Aye.
Chairman Nicholas.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, motion has been adopted. House bill or Senate file.
Senate file. And then that amendment, let's bring that up. We're going to post this for Tuesday noon. We have a re-referral at that time, probably more, but let's go ahead and post this for Tuesday noon and we'll do the technical amendment as a committee amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it can get down to the desk and read in time.
So I think.
What's our deadline?
We just passed the technical. That's done.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be
It'll be in the new
engrossed
draft.
that way.
Right.
What's our
Correct.
deadline for committee and getting it out to the floor?
Don?
Mr. Chairman, I believe on the Senate side, it needs to be at and approved by LSO and the sponsor, in this case, the committee, for a Senate bill on noon on Tuesday, which you have already done with this action. So you've met that deadline.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more comment unrelated to this bill, but just to advise the committee on Tuesday during markup of the ARPA bill that has been approved. It will be posted on the website. Secondly, the committee approved the CAPCON bill and gave a fair bit of discretion to the chairs to resolve any technical issues. There was one related to the demolition of penitentiary facilities, and the committee had adopted as much funds as is necessary. That is unusual language for us. So the co-chairs for an initial draft elected to say not more than $10 million. Just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Mr. Chairman, with that, the budget bill will be posted electronically as well as circulated on the floor, along with the summary sheets to treat everyone equally. The summary sheet you receive at your desk will be in legal size. The summary sheet that you receive here will be in the newspaper or portfolio size.
And that be distributed when?
Mr. Chairman, summary report will be distributed today as well.
Great.
In addition, we will also put out a new profile. That new profile will be inclusive of all JAC action, which is the tradition of this committee, which is inclusive of local governments, capital construction, ARPA, and the supplemental budget bill. That allows members to compare side by side to the governor's recommendation on all of those. We really wanted to address this before the 3-day weekend.
And at some point in time next week, on that long-term profile that you prepared for us, we'll incorporate that in.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
That'd be good. And then what I'd like to do is have a joint appropriations meeting that is informal, where you can come and just walk through that with us again. Because I think it'll be useful. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Coach?
No, we need to get down to the floor.